The helicopter's rotors beat steady rhythm against the night sky as HM2 Sarah Chun adjusted the straps on her medical pack. 80 pounds of trauma supplies pressed against her back, familiar weight after 6 months of training. Around her, 7 other SEALs checked weapons and gear with practiced efficiency. Senior Chief Miller stood near the open door, tablet in hand, his weathered face illuminated by the screen's blue glow. 22 years in the teams had carved deep lines around his eyes. He looked up, scanning the faces of his operators before his gaze settled on Chun. "Doc, you'll hold with the vehicle team once we hit ground," Miller said, his voice cutting through the rotor noise. "Hayes will position you at the rally point with the drivers." Chun looked up from her medical kit. "Senior Chief, if casualties occur inside the compound, response time from the rally point adds 4 minutes minimum." Miller's jaw tightened. "The plan has you in rear security document. That's where you'll be." Across from Chun, Petty Officer Davidson, call sign Hammer, leaned back against the helicopter's frame. He was massive, 6'2", and 215 pounds of muscle earned through years of Hell Week survivors and combat deployments. His arms crossed over his chest as he caught Miller's eye. "Just saying, Senior Chief, if someone goes down in there, most of us outweigh Doc by 80 pounds minimum," Hammer said. "Not sure how that extraction's supposed to work." Several team members shifted their attention between Hammer and Chun. No one spoke, but Martinez glanced at Rodriguez, and something unspoken passed between them. Lieutenant Commander Hayes moved forward from his position near the cockpit. The officer was newer to the team, only his second deployment as a platoon leader, and his careful consideration of every decision showed in the way he studied tactical problems. He looked at Chun, then at Miller. "Senior Chief's right," Hayes said. "We keep Doc at the rally point. If we need her forward, we'll call her up. But initial assault, she stays back." Chen's fingers stilled on the buckle of her medical pack. "Sir, I've trained for exactly this type of operation. My position should be with the assault element, where I can reach casualties immediately." Hayes shook his head. "Negative. You're 5'4", what, 135? Dragging a 200-pound operator under fire isn't about training, document. It's about physics." The silence that followed pressed heavier than the helicopter's vibration through the metal floor. Chun methodically resumed, checking her supplies, each item accounted for and secured. Tourniquets, hemostatic gauze, chest seals, airway kit for supplies. Everything in its place. "Look, no disrespect, Doc," Hammer said, his tone suggesting he considered his words perfectly respectful. "But when bullets start flying and someone's bleeding out, we need to know whoever's coming for us can actually get us out. That compound's got narrow doorways, stairs, tight corners. You ever try carrying someone twice your size through a space like that?" Chun met his eyes. "In training, yes. Multiple times. Training's not the same," Hammer replied. He exchanged looks with Patterson, who nodded agreement. Miller pulled up a satellite image on his tablet, apparently considering the matter closed. "Rally point is here, 200 meters south of the target building. Doc, you'll have line of sight to the entrance. Vehicle team stays with you. Assault element clears the structure, secures the objective, we extract. Simple operation. Unless it's not simple," Chun said quietly. Miller looked up sharply. "Say again?" Chun kept her voice level. "Sir, if the intelligence is wrong and there are more fighters than expected, if the assault element gets pinned down, if multiple casualties occur simultaneously, every second matters. Brain damage from blood loss starts at 4 minutes. That's my window from the rally point to inside the structure, assuming no obstacles or enemy contact." The senior chief's expression hardened. "Doc, I've been running operations since before you finished high school. I know the timelines. The plan stands." Hayes nodded his agreement. "We got good intel on this one. Small enemy force, minimal resistance expected. Your skills won't be needed on the X document, but they'll be ready if we need to call you forward." Chun returned to her medical kit, withdrawing a small notebook where she'd written blood type information for every team member. She reviewed it silently, committing the details to memory one more time. Martinez, O positive. Rodriguez, a positive. Hammer, O negative. Miller, AB positive, the universal recipient. Patterson, a negative. What's that, Doc? Patterson asked, leaning forward to see. Blood types, Chen replied. All of yours, in case I need to set up transfusions in the field. Patterson blinked. You memorizing that stuff? Someone should know it. Hammer snorted softly. Optimistic, thinking you'll be close enough to use it. The helicopter began its descent, the pilot's voice crackling through the internal comms with a 2-minute warning. Around Chun, the team shifted into final preparation mode. Weapons came up, night vision goggles came down, each operator falling into the focused silence that preceded insertion. Chun pulled her own rifle across her chest, checked the chamber one final time, and secured her medical pack straps. The weight settled familiar across her shoulders. 80 pounds plus 60 pounds of body armor and ammunition. She'd carried heavier during training, through obstacle courses and long movements, but training wasn't combat. Everyone kept reminding her of that distinction. The helicopter's skids touched sand, and Miller was first out the door, his team flowing behind him in practice sequence. Chun waited, watching them disappear into the darkness toward the target compound 300 meters north. Then Hayes touched her shoulder, directing her toward the rally point where 2 drivers waited with vehicles. As she moved into position, Chun could hear the assault element's radio chatter, calm voices reporting their approach to the compound. She knelt behind a low wall, medical pack beside her, and watched the structure's dark outline against the slightly lighter sky. Inside that building, something was about to happen, and she was 200 meters away, counting seconds, hoping the plan would hold together long enough that her skills would remain unnecessary, knowing from experience that hope and reality rarely maintain the same trajectory. The rally point offered clear sight lines to the target compound, but little else. Chun positioned herself between 2 vehicles, her medical pack within arm's reach, rifle resting across her knees. The 2 drivers, both junior enlisted, maintained watch on opposite flanks. Neither had spoken to her since insertion. Through her night vision, the compound appeared as a collection of angular green shapes against darker green sky. 2 stories, flat roof, small courtyard enclosed by a wall. Miller's voice came through her earpiece, calm and measured as the team approached the outer perimeter. Bravo actual, 200 meters out. Moving to breach point, Miller reported. Chen's fingers traced the outline of her medical pack's main compartment, a habit formed during countless training exercises. Tourniquet position top left. Hemostatic gauze below it. Chest seals in the middle pouch. She could access any item without looking, purely by muscle memory and spatial awareness. The driver to her left, a kid named Morrison who couldn't be older than 22, glanced at her equipment. That's a lot of gear to carry, he said quietly. Standard loadout for a team medic, Chen replied. Yeah, but like with all your other stuff too. Morrison gestured at her armor, weapon, and ammunition. Must be what, 140 pounds total? 153, Chun said. Give or take. Morrison's eyebrows rose. And you move around and all that? Train for it. The young driver fell silent, and Chen returned her attention to the compound. Through her earpiece, she heard Miller's team stack up at the entry point. Breaching in 5, 4, 3, the senior chief counted down. The muffled thump of a door charge carried across the distance, followed immediately by the distinct crack of suppressed rifle fire. Contact. Miller's voice remained steady. 2 enemy fighters down, clearing first room. Chun shifted her weight forward, every muscle tense for movement. Her hand moved to her medical pack's shoulder strap. Stay put, Doc. Hayes's voice cut through the channel. We've got this. More gunfire echoed from the compound, a sustained burst that suggested concentrated resistance rather than scattered opposition. Chun counted the shots, her mind automatically categorizing them by weapon type and positioning. AK variant, probably 3 shooters, 2nd floor, eastern corner. Taking fire from 2nd level, Martinez reported, his breathing elevated but controlled. Patterson's moving to flank. The radio crackled with tactical updates as the team maneuvered through the structure. Chun tracked their movements in her mind, building a mental map based on their position reports and the compound's layout from the satellite imagery. Miller and Rodriguez clearing ground floor western rooms. Martinez and Hammer pushing stairs to second level. Patterson circling to rear entrance. Then a different sound cut through the chatter. A sharp grunt of pain, followed by Patterson's strained voice. Hit, I'm hit. Right shoulder through and through. Chen was on her feet before conscious thought, her hand already gripping her medical pack. Morrison stood too, uncertain. Doc, stay at rally point. Hayes ordered immediately. Patterson, how bad? Bleeding pretty good, sir, Patterson replied, his voice tight. Still in a fight, but I need that patched. Chen keyed her radio. Sir, shoulder wound with active bleeding requires immediate pressure and packing. Every minute increases blood loss risk. Hammer's already on him, Doc, Hayes said. We've got it contained. Through her night vision, Chen could see muzzle flashes in the compound's second-floor windows. The firefight continued, slower now, but still active. Her jaw clenched as she forced herself to remain in position, medical training warring against command structure. Patterson was hit. She should be moving to him. That was her job, her entire purpose on this team. Patterson, status? Miller's voice cut through the channel. Hammer's got pressure on it. Senior Chief Patterson responded. Hurts like hell, but bleeding's slowing. Chun listened to Hammer's brief instructions to Patterson. Competent, but basic. Direct pressure, maintain it, don't move the arm. It would work for now, but proper wound packing with hemostatic gauze would be better. And she'd need to check for exit wound damage, assess nerve function, establish for access in case shock developed. Morrison watched her, clearly reading the tension in her posture. You want to be in there, he said. That's where I should be, Chen replied. The young driver hesitated, then spoke carefully. Is it true you're the first female medic to deploy with a SEAL team? Chen kept her eyes on the compound. First to deploy with an assault element. Yes. There have been female medics with support units, but not integrated directly into team operations. Must be a lot of pressure. Just doing my job, Chen said. The gunfire from the compound ceased abruptly. Miller's voice came through, professional and calm. Structure secure. 3 enemy fighters neutralized. 1 detained for questioning. Patterson stable. We're setting up for extraction. Chun felt the tension drain from her shoulders, replaced immediately by a different kind of frustration. The mission was complete. Patterson was wounded but stable, and she'd spent the entire operation watching from 200 meters away, her skills and training unutilized. Doc, bring the vehicles up, Hayes ordered. We'll load Patterson and the detainee, then move to extraction point. Chun signaled to Morrison and the other driver. The vehicles rumbled to life, closing the distance to the compound's entrance. As they approached, Chun could see the team emerging from the structure, Patterson walking under his own power with Hammer support. Blood darkened Patterson's shoulder and sleeve, but he was conscious and mobile. The vehicle stopped, and Chun was out immediately, medical pack in hand. She moved to Patterson, who looked surprised to see her. Doc, I'm good, Patterson said. Hammer got it under control. Chun ignored him, already assessing the wound with practiced efficiency. She peeled back Hammer's improvised pressure dressing, noted the entrance and exit wounds, checked capillary refill in Patterson's fingers. The big SEAL watched her work, his expression unreadable in the darkness. You want to repack this with hemostatic gauze, Chen said, already preparing the supplies. Current dressing is adequate but not optimal. I need to check for nerve damage and establish for access. Hammer, you did good work here, she added, glancing at him. Clean pressure, minimal contamination. But I'll take it from here. The big SEAL stepped back without argument, though his eyes remained on her as she worked. Chen's hands moved with absolute certainty, packing the wound, securing the dressing, checking Patterson's vital signs. 2 minutes, and she had him properly stabilized with a 4-line established. Miller approached, watching the final stages of her treatment. Good work, Doc, he said quietly. Patterson, you're cleared for movement. Load up. As Patterson climbed into the vehicle with assistance, Miller caught Chen's eye. That was solid medical work, he said. Professional. Chen nodded acknowledgement, already repacking her supplies. Thank you, Senior Chief. But the plan was still right, Miller continued. Keeping you at rally point. This time we got lucky, wound wasn't critical. But if Patterson had been in worse shape, if multiple casualties had occurred, you being in the structure wouldn't have changed the outcome. Would have just put another team member at risk. Chun finished securing her medical pack without responding. She understood the logic, even agreed with parts of it. But logic didn't account for the hollowness of sitting at a rally point while her teammate bled 200 meters away. It didn't account for the fact that her training, her skills, her entire purpose remained theoretical until someone actually let her do her job where it mattered most. The vehicles moved toward the extraction point, Patterson stable, and the mission complete. Chun sat in silence, watching the compound disappear behind them, knowing that in Miller's assessment and in Hayes' planning, tonight had proven them right. The female medic had stayed safe at the rally point, and everything had worked out fine, which meant next time they'd make the same call, and the time after that, and every time after, until something happened that forced them to see her as more than a liability to be protected. 3 days passed before the next operation briefing. Patterson was medevaced to a field hospital where surgeons confirmed Chin's wound treatment had been flawless, preventing potential nerve damage and significant blood loss. The team received new intelligence about a high-value target in a different sector, requiring immediate action. Chin sat in the operations tent reviewing medical supply inventories when Miller approached with Hayes. Both men carried tablets displaying mission details, their expressions focused and businesslike. "Doc, we've got movement on a priority target," Miller said without preamble. "Compound raid, similar to last operation, but larger structure. 3 buildings instead of 1. Possible hostile count between 8 and 12 fighters." Chun looked up from her inventory sheets. "When do we insert?" 2200 tonight, Hayes replied. "Fast turnaround, but intelligence indicates the target won't remain in location beyond 48 hours. Miller pulled up architectural diagrams on his tablet. "Primary building here, 2 auxiliary structures flanking it. We'll split into 2 elements. I'll take Alpha Team through the main building. Hayes leads Bravo Team, clearing the auxiliaries." Chun waited for her assignment, though she already suspected what was coming. "You'll establish an aid station at the primary rally point," Miller continued. "Central position between all 3 structures. If casualties occur, we bring them to you rather than you moving forward into active engagement zones." Hayes nodded agreement. "It's the most efficient setup, document. You'll have clear access to all 3 buildings, and we can consolidate casualties at a single treatment point rather than having you move between structures under fire." Chun kept her voice level. "Sir, if casualties occur simultaneously in multiple buildings, response time will be slower than if I'm positioned with one of the assault elements. I could move with Alpha Team, treat casualties as they occur, then reposition as needed." Miller shook his head. "Doc, last mission proved the concept. You treated Patterson efficiently at the rally point. The system works. We're not changing it." The senior chief's tone indicated the decision was final, not open for discussion. Chun recognized that particular inflection from her first weeks with the team, before she'd learned which battles were worth fighting and which were predetermined. "Understood, Senior Chief," Chun said. "I'll prep the aid station supplies." After Miller and Hayes departed, Martinez appeared in the tent entrance. The operator was slightly older than most of the team, 34 with 2 previous deployments and a reputation for steady competence rather than flashy heroics. He knocked on the tent frame, despite the entrance being open. "Got a minute, Doc?" Martinez asked. Chun gestured to the empty chair across from her workspace. "What do you need?" Martinez sat, his movements deliberate. "Wanted to ask you something." "Off the record." Chun waited, setting down her pen. "The guys," Martinez said carefully, "they're not trying to disrespect you. You know that, right? It's just, this whole situation is new for everyone. Female operators in combat roles, female medics integrated with assault elements. Nobody really knows how it's supposed to work." "I know how it's supposed to work," Chun replied. "The same way it works with male medics. I go where the casualties are." Martinez nodded slowly. "Yeah, but that's the thing. You're not just another medic to them. You're—" He paused, searching for words. You're something they feel responsible for, like they need to protect you on top of completing the mission. Chen's jaw tightened. I don't need protection. I need to do my job. I get that, Martinez said. And for what it's worth, I think you're right. Saw how you handled Patterson's wound. Textbook perfect. Hammer said so too, even if he won't say it out loud. Then why keep me at rally points? Chen asked. Why not let me prove I can operate in the structure like any other team member? Martinez leaned back in his chair. Because if something happens to you, if you get hit or killed, this whole experiment ends. You're not just Chun to them. You're the test case for whether women can do this job. And if the test case fails, especially if it fails because senior leadership put you in harm's way, that's the end of female integration in special operations. Chen had heard variations of this argument before during BUD/S training and advanced medical courses. The weight of representation, the burden of proving capability not just for herself but for every woman who might follow. She understood the logic even as she resented its implications. So I'm supposed to accept limited duty to protect a political outcome? Chen said. I'm saying the pressure on Miller and Hayes isn't just tactical, Martinez replied. It's career-ending if they get it wrong. And they're defining getting it wrong as anything that results in you being seriously injured or killed, regardless of mission success. Chen returned to her inventory sheets, her pen moving across the paper with controlled precision. So what would you do if you were them? Martinez considered the question. Honestly, I'd probably do the same thing they're doing, at least initially. But I'd also be watching for opportunities to expand your role gradually. Show competency in controlled situations. Build trust incrementally. That could take years, Chen said. Might take less if circumstances force the issue, Martinez replied. Sometimes the situation decides things that leadership can't plan for. The operator stood, preparing to leave. For what it's worth, Doc, I'd rather have you in the building with us than waiting outside. You're solid. The guys just need to see you more clearly. After Martinez left, Chun continued her preparations. Medical supplies sorted and packed for rapid deployment. Trauma kits staged for multiple casualty scenarios. For supplies organized by blood type. Every detail accounted for. Every contingency planned. All of it designed for an aid station role that kept her separated from the actual combat operations. She understood Miller's reasoning and Hayes' caution. She even acknowledged Martinez's point about the broader implications of her success or failure. But understanding didn't ease the frustration of watching her teammates move into danger while she remained behind, didn't diminish the certainty that her skills were being wasted on principle rather than necessity. The tent flap opened again, and Hammer ducked inside. The Big SEAL carried his rifle maintenance kit, though his presence in the medical tent seemed more purposeful than coincidental. Doc, quick question, Hammer said. If someone takes a hit to the femoral artery, how long before they bleed out? Depends on the wound severity, Chen replied. Complete transection. You've got maybe 2 minutes of consciousness, 3 to 4 minutes until death without intervention. Partial tear gives you slightly more time. Hammer nodded, processing the information. And you can fix that? In the field? If I can get to them fast enough, yes. Tourniquet high and tight, hemostatic packing if needed, pressure until we can get them to surgery. The operator was quiet for a moment. Patterson said you were checking his fingers after you packed his wound. What was that about? Nerve damage assessment, Chen explained. Shoulder wounds can affect the brachial plexus, cause permanent disability if not properly evaluated. I was checking motor function and sensation to ensure the bullet didn't compromise nerve pathways. Hammer absorbed this, then spoke carefully. That's more than just stopping the bleeding. That's comprehensive trauma care, Chen said, which is what I'm trained to provide. The Big SEAL met her eyes. Yeah, he said simply, I'm starting to see that. He left without further comment, but something in the brief exchange felt different from their previous interactions. Not acceptance exactly, but perhaps the beginning of reconsideration. Chen returned to her preparations, knowing that tonight's operation would likely follow the same pattern as before. She'd establish her aid station, the team would clear the structures, and if casualties occurred, they'd bring the wounded to her rather than allowing her to reach them where they fell. But Martinez's words stayed with her. Sometimes the situation decides things that leadership can't plan for. Chen didn't wish for circumstances that would force the issue, didn't want disasters that would prove her capability through crisis. But if those circumstances came, if the situation demanded more than the careful planning of risk-averse leaders could accommodate, she'd be ready. Her training ensured that. Her equipment supported it. And increasingly, her certainty grew that the opportunity to prove herself wouldn't wait for permission or gradual trust building. The night operation approached, and Chen finished her preparations with meticulous attention to detail. Whatever role they assigned her, she'd execute it flawlessly. But she'd also be ready for the moment when the plan failed and improvisation became necessity. That moment was coming. She could feel it approaching with the same certainty she felt a patient's pulse beneath her fingers, the steady rhythm building toward something that couldn't be controlled or predicted, only met with skill and determination when it finally arrived. The insertion went smoothly, 3 vehicles dropping the team at a position 400 meters from the target compound. Chen established her aid station behind a low stone wall that offered cover and clear sight lines to all 3 structures. The location was tactically sound, exactly what Miller had described during the briefing. It was also exactly where she didn't want to be. Through her night vision, she watched the team split into their designated elements. Miller's Alpha team moved toward the main building, 6 operators flowing through the darkness with practice silence. Hayes led Bravo team toward the auxiliary structures on the eastern flank. Within minutes, both elements had disappeared into the compound's perimeter, leaving Chen alone with her medical supplies and growing sense of disconnect from the actual operation. The radio chatter began as teams reached their breach points. Alpha stacking on primary entrance. Bravo moving to auxiliary 1. Chen's hands rested on her medical pack, every sense attuned to the voices in her earpiece, listening for the subtle changes in tone or breathing that would indicate contact or casualties. Breaching now, Miller's voice came through, followed by the distinct sound of a door charge detonating. The gunfire started immediately, heavier than the previous operation. Chen was on her feet instantly, her body responding before conscious thought. Multiple weapons firing, overlapping reports suggesting more enemy fighters than intelligence had predicted. Contact heavy, ground floor, Miller reported, his voice elevated but controlled. Multiple hostiles were taking fire from interior rooms. Bravo and Auxiliary 1, Hayes called. Clear so far, moving to second floor. Chen's jaw clenched as she listened to Alpha Team's engagement intensify. Rodriguez called out targets. Martinez reported movement on stairs. Hammer's heavy breathing punctuated by controlled bursts of rifle fire. The fight was sustained, not the quick clearance they'd anticipated. Alpha, we've got a problem. Rodriguez's voice cut through. Room 3 has reinforced position. They're dug and good. We need to flank, but the hallway's a fatal funnel. Miller's response was immediate. Patterson, you and Hammer swing around through the courtyard. Come in through the western window. We'll suppress from the hallway. Chun tracked the maneuver in her mind, visualizing the compound layout from the satellite imagery. The western approach would expose Patterson and Hammer to potential fire from the second floor, but it was the only way to break the stalemate on ground level. Moving now, Patterson confirmed. The next 30 seconds stretched into subjective eternity. Chun heard the suppressed fire from Miller's position, heard Patterson and Hammer's quick movement across the courtyard, heard the sudden burst of unsuppressed AK fire that erupted from an unexpected position. Taking fire, second floor window, Hammer shouted. Patterson's down, Patterson's down. Chun was moving before Miller could respond, her medical pack across her shoulders, rifle up, covering the distance to the compound at a dead run. Behind her, the aid station sat abandoned, all the careful planning and tactical positioning rendered irrelevant by the single fact that mattered. Her teammate was hit and she was too far away. Doc, stay at rally point. Hayes ordered, his voice sharp. Alpha, what's Patterson's status? Chun ignored the order, her boots pounding against hard-packed earth as she closed the gap. 200 meters. She could hear Hammer's strained voice through her earpiece. The Big SEAL's usual composure fracturing under stress. "He's not moving, Senior Chief," Hammer reported. "I can't get to him, still taking fire from that window." Chun hit the compound's outer wall at full speed, using the corner for cover as she assessed the situation. The courtyard stretched 30 meters across, Patterson's body visible in the moonlight near the western wall. The second-floor window showed occasional muzzle flash as the enemy fighter maintained suppressing fire. "Doc, where are you?" Miller's voice carried an edge Chun had never heard before. Chun keyed her radio while moving along the wall toward a position with better access to the courtyard. "Approaching courtyard, western side. I can reach Patterson, but I need that window suppressed." "Negative. You're ordered back to Rally Point," Hayes cut in. "Sir, Patterson is immobile in an open courtyard," Chun replied, still moving. "If he's alive, he's bleeding out. Every second decreases his survival probability." "Martinez, Rodriguez, get eyes on that window," Miller ordered, making the tactical decision despite Hayes' command. "Doc, you've got 30 seconds of suppression. Make it count." Chun didn't waste breath on acknowledgement. She waited, crouched at the courtyard's edge, until Martinez and Rodriguez's fire shattered the second-floor window and forced the enemy fighter back. Then she was running, medical pack bouncing against her back, crossing the open ground in a low sprint that covered distance through momentum rather than protection. Patterson lay on his side, blood pooling beneath him. Chun dropped beside him, her hands already assessing. Gunshot wound to the lower abdomen. Entry visible, exit wound in the back. Massive bleeding, possibly hit the inferior vena cava or abdominal aorta. His pulse was thready and rapid, skin cold and clammy. Hypovolemic shock, advancing fast. "Patterson, can you hear me?" Chun stripped away his gear, exposing the wound. His eyes flickered open, unfocused. "Doc," he whispered, "can't feel my legs." Chun's hands moved with absolute precision despite the circumstances. Hemostatic gauze packed into the entry wound, pressure applied with her full body weight. The exit wound was larger, more complicated. She packed it as well, fighting against the arterial bleeding that wanted to overcome every intervention. The suppressing fire from Martinez and Rodriguez continued, keeping the second-floor fighter pinned. But Chun could hear other movement in the compound, more enemy fighters responding to the engagement. Time was collapsing into a narrow window of survivability. "Senior Chief, Patterson has massive abdominal bleeding," Chun reported while working. "Possible major vessel involvement. He's in shock. I need immediate extraction to this position and surgical intervention within 30 minutes, or he won't make it." Miller's voice carried the weight of command decisions made under impossible pressure. "Hammer, get to Doc's position. You're carrying Patterson out. Everyone else, we finish clearing this building, then we extract." Chun had both wounds packed and was establishing fore access with practiced efficiency. Patterson's veins were collapsing from blood loss, making the procedure harder, but her hands found the subclavian vein by anatomical landmarks rather than visual confirmation. The foreline went in clean, and she pushed fluids as fast as the setup allowed. Hammer appeared beside her, his massive frame providing additional cover. His face was pale beneath the camouflage paint. "Is he going to make it, Doc?" "If we move fast, and I can maintain pressure during transport," Chun replied. "But he needs a surgeon now." The big SEAL didn't hesitate. He positioned himself to lift Patterson in a modified carry that would keep pressure on the wounds. Chun maintained hand pressure on the packing while Hammer stood, taking Patterson's weight plus Chun's medical pack plus Chun herself partially supporting the wounded operator. They moved as a unit back across the courtyard, Martinez and Rodriguez maintaining suppression, reaching the relative safety of the compound's outer wall. Chun never released pressure on Patterson's wounds, her arms burning from the sustained effort. Her entire focus narrowed to maintaining the interventions, keeping her teammate alive. At the aid station, Chun worked with fierce intensity. Additional packing, tourniquet high on the leg where she suspected internal bleeding was compromising circulation, constant monitoring of vitals that were trending downward despite her interventions. Patterson drifted in and out of consciousness, his body fighting a battle that medicine could support, but not win without surgical repair. Miller's voice came through the radio. "Building secure. We're extracting now." "Doc, how's Patterson?" "Critical, but stable," Chen reported. "He needs a trauma surgeon immediately. I've done everything possible in the field, but he has internal bleeding I can't control." The team consolidated at the aid station, the mission objective forgotten in the face of Patterson's injury. Hayes appeared, taking in the scene with obvious tension. His earlier order for Chun to remain at rally point hung unspoken between them, rendered irrelevant by the outcome. The extraction helicopter arrived within 12 minutes. The crew chief helping transfer Patterson aboard, with Chun maintaining pressure throughout the movement. As the aircraft lifted off, Chun stood beside the now empty aid station, her hands covered in Patterson's blood, her medical pack depleted of critical supplies. Miller approached, his expression unreadable in the darkness. "You disobeyed a direct order." "Document," Chun met his eyes. "Yes, Senior Chief, I did." The Senior Chief was quiet for a moment. "Patterson would be dead if you hadn't," he said finally. "You made the right call, but we're going to have a serious discussion about chain of command when we get back." Chun nodded acknowledgement, too exhausted for anything more than professional acceptance. The mission was over. Patterson was alive because she'd ignored orders and done her job the way it needed to be done. The consequences would come later, along with the debriefs and the questions about a female medic abandoning her assigned position to run into active combat. But Patterson was alive, and for now, that was the only metric that mattered. The debriefing took place 6 hours after Patterson was wheeled into emergency surgery. Chen sat in a folding chair across from Miller, Hayes, and Commander Berkeley, the task force operations officer who'd flown in specifically for this discussion. Her uniform still carried Patterson's blood, dried to brown stains across her sleeves and chest. Commander Berkeley studied a tablet displaying the mission report, his expression neutral but focused. He was career Navy, 30 years of service that included multiple combat deployments and command positions. When he finally looked up, his eyes settled on Chun with professional assessment rather than obvious judgment. "HM2 Chun," Berkeley began, "you disobeyed a direct order from Lieutenant Commander Hayes to remain at the rally point. Is that correct?" "Yes, sir," Chun replied. "And you made this decision knowing it violated your assigned tactical position and chain of command?" "Yes, sir." Berkeley set down the tablet. "Explain your reasoning." Chun kept her voice steady. "Sir, Petty Officer Patterson sustained a catastrophic abdominal wound with massive arterial bleeding. From the rally point, response time to his position was estimated at 4 to 6 minutes given the active combat situation. Medical research indicates survival probability for major abdominal vessel injuries decreases by approximately 15% for each minute delayed treatment. At 6 minutes, Patterson's survival probability would have been functionally 0. Hayes leaned forward. "Doc, the tactical situation made movement to Patterson's position extremely dangerous. That second-floor fighter could have killed you in the courtyard." "He could have, sir," Chen agreed. "But Martinez and Rodriguez provided effective suppression, and the risk assessment favored immediate action over delayed response." Miller spoke, his tone measured. "Doc made a field decision based on medical necessity. Patterson's still alive because she reached him when she did. The surgeons confirmed she probably added 15 to 20 minutes to his survivability window with her field interventions." Berkeley nodded slowly. "I've read the surgical report. They noted the wound packing was expertly done for access established under extreme conditions, and hemorrhage control was as good as could be achieved in the field." He paused. "They also noted that without those interventions, Patterson would have exsanguinated before reaching medical facilities." The room fell silent. Chun waited, understanding that her actions existed in the complicated space between military discipline and medical necessity, between following orders and saving lives. "Here's my problem," Berkeley continued. "We're running a test case with female integration in special operations. Every decision, every outcome gets scrutinized by people looking for reasons to either expand or terminate the program. And one of the primary concerns opponents raise is whether women can follow orders in combat situations or whether they'll make emotional decisions that compromise tactical integrity. Chen's jaw tightened, but she remained silent. Now, I personally think that's nonsense, Berkeley said. But my personal opinion doesn't change the political reality. And what happened last night gives ammunition to people who want to see this program fail. They'll say you acted emotionally, that you couldn't handle the stress of having a teammate down, that you prioritized feelings over orders. That's not what happened, sir, Chen replied. My decision was based on medical assessment and probability analysis, not emotion. I know that, Berkeley said, but perception matters, especially at this stage. Hay spoke carefully. Sir, perhaps the solution is to adjust Doc's tactical positioning for future operations. Keep her with the assault element rather than at rally points. Eliminate the need for her to move forward under fire. Miller shook his head. That puts her in the most dangerous position from the start. If she gets hit, we lose our medic and the program takes a catastrophic blow. So what's the alternative? Hayes asked. We position her safely. She disobeys orders when casualties occur, and we end up having this same conversation after every operation? Berkeley raised a hand, stopping the debate. Gentlemen, the issue isn't Chen's positioning. The issue is that our tactical planning hasn't adequately accounted for the medical realities of combat operations. He looked at Chen. Doc, in your professional opinion, what's the optimal positioning for a team medic during compound clearance operations? Chen considered the question carefully. Sir, optimal positioning depends on multiple variables including structure layout, expected enemy strength, and team composition. But, generally, a medic should be positioned to reach any casualty within 2 minutes maximum. For multi-building operations, that typically means moving with the primary assault element where casualty probability is highest. And the risk to the medic? Berkeley asked. Same as any other team member in the assault element. Sir, Chen replied. We train to the same standards, carry the same equipment, and accept the same risks. Berkeley turned to Miller. Senior Chief, honest assessment. Is Chen capable of operating in an assault element position without being a liability to the team? Miller was quiet for a long moment. His answer would carry significant weight, and everyone in the room knew it. Finally, he spoke. Sir, Doc's performed flawlessly in every tactical situation. She moves well, shoots well, and maintains composure under fire. Last night, she crossed 30 meters of open ground under enemy observation, treated a critical casualty while still taking fire, and kept him alive through extraction. That's not liability behavior. That's exactly what we need from a team medic. Hayes looked surprised by Miller's assessment, but didn't contradict it. Berkeley nodded slowly, processing the input. Then we adjust the tactical doctrine, Berkeley said. Effective immediately, HM2 Chun will be positioned with assault elements during compound operations. She'll operate under the same tactical guidelines as other team members, with the understanding that her primary responsibility is casualty treatment. But her positioning puts her where she can execute that responsibility most effectively. Chun felt something release in her chest, tension she'd been carrying for months. However, Berkeley continued, his tone sharpening. There will be no more unauthorized movement during operations. If you're positioned with the assault element and ordered to hold position, you will hold position. Clear? Crystal clear, sir, Chen replied. The commander stood, signaling the meeting's conclusion. I'll be filing a report on this incident that frames your actions as appropriate medical response under combat conditions. But Chen, understand that you're under a microscope. Every action you take, every decision you make will be examined by people looking for ammunition to use against female integration. Fair or not, that's the reality. I understand, sir. After Berkeley departed, Miller and Hayes remained. The lieutenant commander looked at Chun with an expression mixing respect and residual concern. Doc, for what it's worth, you made the right call last night, Hayes said. I should have positioned you differently from the start. Miller stood, preparing to leave. Next operation, you're with Alpha Element. Full integration, no special treatment. You keep up with the team or you don't go. Understood? Understood, Senior Chief, Chen replied. After they left, Chun sat alone in the briefing room. Her uniform still bore Patterson's blood, physical evidence of the cost of combat and the necessity of rapid medical intervention. The political calculations and program pressures existed in some distant, abstract space compared to the concrete reality of keeping teammates alive. But those calculations and pressures had determined her fate for months, keeping her separated from the team, limiting her ability to execute her actual function. Now, finally, the barriers were lowering, not because of political decisions or progressive policies, but because circumstances had forced leadership to acknowledge that medical necessity sometimes trumped tactical caution. Chun stood and headed toward her quarters to change uniforms. Patterson was out of surgery, stable but critical. The doctors said her field interventions had been decisive, buying the time necessary for surgical repair of the damaged vessels. He'd recover, eventually, and return to the team. And when he did, Chun would be positioned where she belonged, integrated with the assault element, ready to reach casualties within seconds rather than minutes. The test case would continue, the scrutiny would intensify, and the pressure to perform flawlessly would only increase. But she'd have the opportunity to do her job the way it was meant to be done. And that opportunity, earned through disobedience and validated by results, was worth every consequence and every challenge that would follow. The next mission would tell the story more clearly. Whether the team could truly accept her as a full member, whether tactical positioning would translate to actual integration, whether leadership's words about equal treatment would match operational reality. Chun didn't expect immediate acceptance or perfect implementation, but she'd proven her capability under the worst possible circumstances. Now, she just needed the chance to prove it wasn't an isolated incident, but a sustainable standard of performance. That chance was coming, probably sooner than anyone expected. The operational tempo was increasing. Intelligence indicated multiple high-value targets requiring immediate action, and the team would deploy again within days. Chun changed into a clean uniform, her movements automatic as her mind processed the morning's developments. The blood-stained uniform went into a bag for proper disposal. Physical evidence of the night's crisis removed, but the memory permanently fixed. Patterson's pale face, his whispered words about not feeling his legs, the desperate pressure required to control bleeding that wanted to overcome every intervention. Those memories would stay with her, joining the accumulated experiences that defined her understanding of combat medicine. Each casualty treated, each life saved or lost, became part of a knowledge base that informed future decisions. And last night had taught her the most important lesson. Sometimes the right medical decision meant ignoring tactical orders, accepting personal risk, and trusting that competence would justify disobedience after the fact. The team was gathering for evening chow when Chun emerged from her quarters. Hammer stood outside the mess tent, and when he saw her, he straightened. The big SEAL approached with purposeful stride. "Doc," he said simply, "Patterson's awake. Asked to see you." Chun followed Hammer to the medical tent, where Patterson lay connected to monitors and 4 lines. His face was pale but alert, and when he saw Chun, he managed a weak smile. "They tell me you saved my life, Doc," Patterson said. "You would have done the same for me," Chun replied. Patterson shook his head slightly. Running across that courtyard while taking fire? That was beyond. He paused, gathering strength. "Thank you." Chun nodded acknowledgement, professional and composed despite the emotion underlying the moment. "Just doing my job." "Yeah," Patterson said. "And now maybe they'll let you actually do it." For days later, new intelligence arrived. High-value target, time-sensitive, requiring immediate team deployment. Chun attended the briefing alongside the full assault element, no longer separated or assigned to rear positions. The shift in her status was subtle but unmistakable in the way Miller included her in tactical discussions, and Hayes directed questions about casualty evacuation routes to her without hesitation. The target compound was larger than previous operations, a sprawling structure with multiple levels and interconnected buildings. Intelligence suggested 8 to 15 enemy fighters, well-armed and prepared for defense. The mission profile indicated significant probability of casualties. Doc, you'll move with Alpha element, position 3 in the stack, Miller said, pointing to the breach diagram. Martinez takes point, Rodriguez behind him, then you, then me. Hammer and the others follow. Chin studied the compound layout, noting choke points and potential casualty collection areas. If we take fire in the main corridor, what's the fallback position for treating wounded? Miller indicated a large room off the primary hallway. Here, good cover, multiple exit routes. But ideally we don't take casualties at all. Hayes added operational timeline details, extraction protocols, and communication procedures. The briefing was thorough and professional, treating Chin's participation as standard rather than exceptional. When questions arose about medical contingencies, the team listened to her input with the same attention given to Martinez's observations about entry tactics or Hammer's assessment of explosive breach requirements. After the briefing concluded, Rodriguez approached Chun as she organized medical supplies. "You ready for this, Doc?" he asked. "Moving with the stack is different than watching from outside." "I've trained for it," Chun replied, checking tourniquets and hemostatic gauze quantities. "Training's good," Rodriguez said. "But when you're number 3 and the guy in front goes down, you're instantly number 2. Can't stop to treat him until the immediate threat is neutralized." "I know the protocols," Chin said. "Treat the threat first, then treat the casualty." Rodriguez nodded. "Just making sure, because if something happens up there, I need to know you're thinking tactical, not medical." Chin met his eyes. "I could do both." The operator seemed satisfied with her response. He turned to leave, then paused. "Patterson told me what you did, running across that courtyard. That took balls, document." "It was necessary," Chin replied. "Yeah," Rodriguez said. "But necessary doesn't mean easy." Respect. The next several hours passed in equipment preparation and final mission planning. Chun double-checked her medical pack, ensuring every item was positioned for rapid access, even in darkness. Her rifle received final inspection, magazines loaded and ready. Body armor adjusted for optimal mobility while maintaining protection. Every detail received attention. The same pre-mission routine she'd performed dozens of times, but now carrying additional weight because she'd be in the primary assault element rather than watching from distance. Martinez found her reviewing the compound blueprints one final time. "Memorizing layout?" he asked. "Identifying potential casualty positions," Chin replied. "If someone goes down, I need to know immediately where I can move them for treatment versus where I need to treat in place." "Smart thinking," Martinez said. He sat beside her, studying the diagrams. "You nervous?" "Some," Chin admitted. "But ready." "Good combination," Martinez said. "Nervous keeps you sharp, ready keeps you effective." He pointed to a narrow corridor on the second floor. "This section worries me. Fatal funnel, limited maneuver space. If we take contact here, extraction will be complicated." Chun traced potential movement routes with her finger. "If casualty occurs here, we'd need to move them back down the stairs before I could treat effectively. Trying to work in that corridor under fire would be suicide." "Exactly," Martinez agreed. "So the play is suppress, extract to stairwell, then you work. Even if that means leaving someone exposed for an extra 30 seconds. Chun understood the tactical logic even as her medical training resisted the idea of delayed treatment. Sometimes survival required accepting suboptimal conditions and trusting that rapid extraction trumped immediate intervention. The mission launch came at 2300 hours. 3 helicopters carried the team toward the target. Chun positioned among the operators rather than segregated with support personnel. The flight was routine, familiar vibration and noise, but her perspective had shifted fundamentally. She wasn't observing the team prepare for insertion. She was part of the preparation, checking and rechecking equipment with the same focused intensity as everyone around her. Miller's voice cut through the helicopter noise. 5 minutes out. Everyone know their position and responsibilities? Affirmative responses came from throughout the aircraft. Chun added her confirmation, feeling the weight of inclusion in that collective acknowledgement. The helicopters descended to insertion point, and the team flowed out into darkness with practiced efficiency. Chun moved with alpha element, maintaining position behind Rodriguez and ahead of Miller, her rifle up and ready. The compound appeared ahead, darker shape against dark sky, windows showing no light but presence obvious. They reached the outer wall without contact. Martinez signaled halt while Rodriguez scouted the breach point. Chun knelt in stack position, her breathing controlled, every sense focused on the environment and the team's movements around her. This was different than watching from a rally point. She was part of the action now, responsible not just for medical response, but for maintaining tactical integrity of the formation. Breach point clear, Rodriguez whispered through the radio. Stacking now. The team moved to the door, forming up in precise order. Martinez took point position, Rodriguez behind him, then Chun, then Miller, with Hammer and the others completing the stack. Chen's hand rested on Rodriguez's shoulder, maintaining contact as they trained, feeling his movements and breathing, the physical connection that kept the stack cohesive. Breaching in 3, 2, 1, Martinez counted. The door exploded inward under explosive charge, and the stack flowed through. Chun moved automatically, maintaining her position, rifle covering her sector as the team entered a wide hallway. Martinez and Rodriguez pushed forward, clearing corners and doorways with smooth precision. Chun followed, her attention divided between maintaining stack discipline and assessing the environment for potential casualty scenarios. Clear left, Martinez called. Clear right, Rodriguez added. They moved deeper into the structure, each room systematically cleared, each corridor checked before advancement. The compound was larger inside than blueprints suggested, with additional rooms and unexpected angles. Chen's medical assessment ran parallel to tactical awareness, noting positions with good cover for casualty treatment, identifying obstacles that would complicate evacuation, calculating distances and times for various scenarios. The team reached a stairwell leading to the second floor. Martinez paused, listening. Chen heard it too. Movement above, voices speaking in a language she didn't understand. Multiple speakers, at least 3 or 4. The enemy fighters were there, 1 floor up. Miller signaled the team to hold position while he considered options. His hand moved in quick gestures, communicating the revised plan. Martinez and Rodriguez would push stairs. Chen would hold at the base, providing cover. Hammer's element would circle to secondary stairs for flanking approach. Chun positioned herself where she could cover the stairwell while maintaining protection from upper floor threats. Her role was clear: provide covering fire if the point team encountered resistance. Be ready to move forward for casualty treatment if needed. The stack discipline she'd maintained since breach would fragment once they split elements, but her positioning remained tactical rather than purely medical. Martinez started up the stairs, Rodriguez close behind. Chen's rifle tracked their movement, ready to engage any threat that appeared above them. The tension was palpable, every operator understanding that the next 60 seconds would determine whether this mission remained routine or escalated into crisis. Then the shooting started, sudden and overwhelming. Automatic weapons fire from multiple positions on the second floor. Martinez and Rodriguez returned fire immediately, their muzzle flashes illuminating the stairwell in strobe effect. Chun aimed upward, identifying targets through the chaos, squeezing controlled bursts at enemy positions. Contact heavy, second floor, multiple hostiles, Martinez shouted over the gunfire. We need to fall back and reassess. The team began controlled withdrawal, Martinez and Rodriguez moving backward down the stairs while maintaining suppressive fire. Chun continued covering, her medical training temporarily subordinated to immediate tactical necessity. Return fire, suppress threats, enable team movement. The casualty treatment would come after, if needed, once the immediate danger was contained. They reached the ground floor, the team consolidating in a large room that offered better defensive position. The gunfire from above continued, but less accurately, enemy fighters shooting at positions the team no longer occupied. Everyone good? Miller asked, quickly checking his element. Sound off. The responses came in order, each operator confirming their status. No casualties, no injuries, just elevated heart rates and adrenaline responses. Chun felt the relief of that confirmation, even as her mind already shifted toward the next phase, the continued clearance that would eventually require pushing back up those stairs into the teeth of a prepared defense. The mission had just begun, and already the tactical situation was more complicated than planning had anticipated. More enemy fighters than intelligence suggested, better prepared positions, heavier weapons. The kind of operation where casualties were probability rather than possibility. Chun checked her medical pack's accessibility, ensuring she could reach critical supplies rapidly when the need arose. Because that need was coming, inevitable as mathematics. The team would push again, would face that second-floor defense, and, when they did, someone would likely get hit. And this time, Chun would be there, positioned exactly where she needed to be to respond immediately rather than watching from hundreds of meters away while precious seconds evaporated. The proving moment was approaching, building toward crescendo through tactical necessity and operational reality. She was ready. The team was ready. And whatever came next, they'd face it together as a fully integrated unit rather than a medic separated by caution and doubt. Miller pulled the team into a defensive perimeter while assessing their options. The second floor remained hostile territory, enemy fighters entrenched and waiting. Hammer's element reported similar resistance at the secondary stairwell, forcing them back before they could establish flanking position. The mission was stalling, caught between the need to secure the objective and the reality of a well-defended target. "We need to punch through that defense," Miller said, studying the tactical situation. "But a direct assault up those stairs is going to cost us casualties. Guaranteed." Hayes's voice came through the radio from his position with Bravo element clearing the auxiliary buildings. "Alpha, what's your status? Do you need support?" "Negative. We've got this," Miller replied. "But it's going to get messy." Chun listened to the discussion while maintaining security on their current position. Her medical pack rested against the wall within easy reach, every supply item cataloged in her mind. She knew exactly how many tourniquets she carried, how many packages of hemostatic gauze, how many chest seals and pressure dressings. The inventory was automatic knowledge, background awareness that would become critical the moment someone went down. Martinez spoke carefully. "Senior Chief, if we're going up those stairs, we need to accept that point, and two positions are exposed for about 5 seconds before they can find cover. That's where we'll take hits if they're waiting." "Which they definitely are," Rodriguez added. "They've got that stairwell dialed in." Chun stepped forward. "If casualties occur on the stairs, can we extract them back down before treating, or do I need to work on the stairs themselves?" Miller considered the question. "Depends on the wound. If someone can move with assistance, we pull them back. If they're immobile, you'll have to treat in place while we maintain suppression." "That's going to put Doc directly in the line of fire," Hammer said. He didn't sound like he was objecting, just stating tactical reality. "Same as the rest of us," Miller replied. "Doc's part of the assault element now. She accepts the same risks." She met Miller's eyes and nodded. "I understand the risks, Senior Chief." The Senior Chief outlined his plan. Martinez and Rodriguez would lead the assault with maximum aggression, moving fast to minimize exposure time. Chun would follow immediately behind, positioned to reach casualties within seconds. Miller and Hammer would provide suppressive fire from the base of the stairs, forcing enemy fighters to keep their heads down during the critical push. "Once we establish position on the second floor, we hold and clear systematically," Miller continued. "No heroes. No unnecessary risks. We've already proven they're dug and good, so we treat this like urban combat against a prepared defense." The team made final preparations, checking ammunition, adjusting positions for optimal firing angles, each operator processing the plan and their role in it. Chun tightened the straps on her medical pack, ensuring it wouldn't shift during movement, and verified her rifle was ready for immediate use if needed. She'd be carrying medical supplies and weapons simultaneously, prepared to function as both medic and fighter, depending on circumstances. Martinez moved to the stairwell entrance, Rodriguez beside him. Both men carried extra magazines, expecting sustained firefight once they committed to the push. Chun positioned herself 3 steps behind, close enough to move forward instantly, but far enough back to avoid being caught in immediate contact. "On my mark," Miller said. 3, 2, 1, go. Martinez and Rodriguez rushed the stairs, their rifles firing controlled bursts upward at known enemy positions. The return fire was immediate and heavy, multiple weapons engaging from concealed positions on the second-floor landing. Chun followed the assault, her boots pounding up the stairs while bullets impacted around her, concrete chips and dust filling the air. Martinez reached the landing and dove right, finding cover behind a support column. Rodriguez went left, his rifle tracking targets. Chun cleared the final steps and pressed against the wall, her position protected but mobile, ready to respond to casualties while staying clear of the primary line of fire. "Clear right side," Martinez called as, breathing heavy. "Taking fire from room 3, Rodriguez responded. "At least 2 shooters, good positions." Miller and Hammer reached the landing, adding their weapons to the suppressive fire. The tactical situation remained tense but contained, neither side gaining clear advantage. Chun scanned the team members, checking for injuries. Everyone was mobile and returning fire, no immediate casualties requiring intervention. Then the shooting pattern changed. A sudden burst from an unexpected angle, the distinct crack of an AK variant from a position the team hadn't identified. Rodriguez grunted and fell backward, his rifle clattering against the floor. Chun was moving before he finished falling, crossing the distance in 2 steps while Martinez shifted to cover the new threat. Rodriguez lay against the wall, his hand pressed to his neck where blood pulsed between his fingers. The wound was high, possibly carotid or jugular involvement. His eyes were wide, scared in a way combat veterans rarely showed. "Doc," Rodriguez whispered, his voice strained. "I can't breathe right." Chin's hands moved with absolute precision, assessing the wound while Martinez and Miller maintained fire above her. Bullet had entered the neck laterally, missing the trachea, but possibly damaging major vessels. Blood flow was significant, but not immediately catastrophic, suggesting partial vessel injury rather than complete transection. "Rodriguez, keep pressure on it," Chun ordered, positioning his hand correctly. "Don't move your head, don't talk." She pulled hemostatic gauze from her pack, working fast but controlled. The neck was complicated territory, vessels and airways packed tight in small space. Wrong treatment could be as dangerous as no treatment. She packed the wound carefully, feeling for the bleeding source, applying pressure that would control hemorrhage without compromising the airway. "Doc, how bad?" Miller asked without taking his eyes off the enemy positions. "Vascular injury, neck," Chin reported. "I'm controlling the bleeding, but he needs surgical repair soon." "Can he move?" Miller pressed. "Not yet," Chin replied. "Give me 2 minutes to stabilize." Those 2 minutes stretched under combat stress, every second marked by continued gunfire and the immediate danger of their exposed position. Chun worked with intense focus, blocking out everything except Rodriguez's wound and the interventions required to keep him alive. Hemostatic packing secured, pressure dressing applied, airway assessed, and confirmed patent. She established 4 access in his arm, pushing fluids to maintain blood pressure. Rodriguez's hand gripped her arm weakly. His color was pale, but he remained conscious, his eyes tracking her movements with desperate trust. "You're stable," Chin told him. "We're getting you out." Martinez had eliminated the shooter who'd hit Rodriguez, and the second-floor firefight was resolving in the team's favor. Miller directed Hammer to cover their withdrawal while he helped Chin move Rodriguez toward the stairs. The extraction was controlled but rapid, Chin maintaining pressure on Rodriguez's neck wound while Miller supported his weight. They reached the ground floor, where Hayes had brought Bravo Element to provide additional security. The lieutenant commander took one look at Rodriguez and immediately called for emergency extraction. Chun continued treatment in a cleared room that offered better protection and light. Rodriguez remained stable, but the wound was serious, requiring vascular surgery beyond field capabilities. She monitored his vitals continuously, adjusted the pressure dressing, maintained flow, and prepared him for helicopter evacuation. "You're good, Doc," Rodriguez said quietly. "Really good. Save your strength," Chen replied. "Don't talk." "No, seriously," Rodriguez insisted. "When that bullet hit, first thing I thought was at least Doc's right here. Didn't have to worry about bleeding out while someone ran to get you." Chen met his eyes briefly, acknowledging the trust implicit in his words, then returned to monitoring his condition. The extraction helicopter would arrive within minutes, and Rodriguez's survival was now dependent on maintaining stability until surgical intervention. Miller appeared in the doorway. "Second floor is secure. Objective achieved." "How's Rodriguez?" "Stable for transport," Chen reported. "Neck wounds are tricky, but I've controlled the bleeding and protected the airway. He'll need a vascular surgeon within the hour, but he should make it." The senior chief nodded. "Good work, document. Under fire, complex wound, textbook treatment." "Just doing my job," Chen replied. "Yeah," Miller said, "but you're doing it where it matters now. Makes a difference." The helicopter arrived, and Rodriguez was loaded aboard with Chen providing final status report to the flight medic. As the aircraft lifted away, she stood in the compound courtyard, her hands covered in Rodriguez's blood, her medical pack depleted of critical supplies, her body running on adrenaline and professional focus. The mission was complete, the objective secured, Rodriguez alive because she'd been positioned exactly where she needed to be when he went down. No rally point delays, no dangerous sprints across open ground, just immediate response from integrated position within the assault element. Martinez approached, his rifle slung and his expression thoughtful. "You save Rodriguez. Document clean, fast, professional. Under fire the whole time, never lost focus." "Team effort," Chen replied. "Maybe," Martinez said, "but you were the critical piece. Rodriguez knows it, team knows it, and now command knows it too. You've proven what needed proving." Chen looked at the compound where gunfire had echoed minutes earlier, where Rodriguez had fallen, and she'd responded without hesitation or doubt. The test case continued. The scrutiny remained, but the question of her capability had shifted from theoretical to demonstrated fact. The team consolidated for extraction, loading equipment, and securing the detained target. Chen replenished her medical supplies from reserve stocks, preparing for potential additional missions. The operational tempo showed no signs of slowing, and the team would deploy again soon. But something fundamental had changed. She was no longer the medic they protected and kept separate. She was the medic who moved with them, who faced the same dangers, who brought critical capability exactly when and where was needed most. The proving moment was still approaching, building towards something larger than a single successful treatment. But tonight had been important validation, demonstration that her integration wasn't just approved policy, but functional reality. Rodriguez would recover because she'd been there. Next time someone fell, she'd be there too. That certainty carried weight and responsibility, but also the satisfaction of purpose fulfilled. She'd trained for this role, fought for the opportunity to execute it properly, and now possessed both the positioning and the team's trust to do her job the way it was meant to be done. The helicopters arrived for extraction, and the team loaded aboard. Chen sat among the operators, no longer separated or marked as different. Just another team member who'd performed their function under fire and contributed to mission success. Martinez caught her eye and nodded once. Simple acknowledgement between professionals. Chen returned the gesture, understanding passing silently between them. The test case would continue, more operations would come, and challenges remained ahead. But tonight, in the darkness of a hostile compound, while bullets flew and a teammate bled, Chen had proven exactly what she'd always known. She belonged here, doing this work with this team. And they were finally beginning to believe it too. The operations tempo accelerated over the following week. 3 separate missions, each successful, each pushing the team harder than the last. Chen moved with Alpha Element through compound clearances and target extractions, her medical pack as familiar as her rifle, her positioning as natural as any other operator. The team had stopped discussing her integration and simply operated as a cohesive unit that included a highly skilled medic. Rodriguez returned from medical treatment after 5 days, the neck wound healing well, with full function preserved. The vascular surgeons had praised Chen's field work, noting that her intervention had prevented both exsanguination and airway compromise. Rodriguez made a point of thanking her publicly during team formation, an acknowledgement that carried weight among the operators. Patterson was cleared for light duty, still recovering from his abdominal injury, but mobile and engaged. Both wounded operators represented validation of Chen's capability, living evidence that her positioning with assault elements translated to saved lives and successful outcomes. The next mission brief came during morning formation. Intelligence had identified a high-value target, a senior enemy commander coordinating attacks across multiple sectors. The compound was larger than previous targets, heavily fortified with an estimated 20 to 30 fighters providing security. The mission profile indicated extreme probability of casualties and sustained combat. Commander Berkeley attended the briefing personally, his presence signaling the operation's strategic importance. He listened as Miller outlined the tactical plan, Hayes detailed support elements, and various team leads discussed their specific responsibilities. When the briefing concluded, Berkeley addressed the assembled operators. This target represents significant operational value, Berkeley said. His elimination or capture will disrupt enemy coordination for months. But we're going into a heavily defended position against superior numbers. Expect serious resistance and plan for casualties. His eyes found Chun in the formation. Doc, you'll be carrying double medical supplies for this one. Murphy's Law suggests if we're planning for heavy casualties, we'll get them. Make sure you're ready. Yes, sir, Chun replied. I'll coordinate with supply to ensure adequate hemostatic agents and 4 fluids. After formation dispersed, Miller pulled Chun aside along with Martinez and Hammer. The 3 operators were now effectively Chen's closest team members, the ones she'd operated alongside most frequently during recent missions. Doc, this one's different, Miller said quietly. 20 to 30 fighters means sustained engagement. We're not going to clear that compound in 10 minutes. More like 30 to 45 minutes of constant combat. And with those numbers, we're statistically certain to take multiple casualties. Chun nodded understanding. I'll stage medical supplies at our entry point, so I can resupply without returning to rally point. And I'll prepare triage protocols for multiple simultaneous casualties. Martinez added his tactical assessment. The compound has 3 separate structures connected by covered walkways. We'll be fighting room to room while also watching those walkways for flanking attacks. It's going to be chaotic, hard to maintain clean sector awareness, which means casualties could occur anywhere, Hammer said. Doc, you comfortable moving between structures under fire to reach wounded? I've done it before, Chun replied, thinking of the courtyard sprint that had saved Patterson. This will be more sustained, Miller cautioned. Not a single sprint, but multiple movements over extended engagement. You'll be exposed repeatedly. I understand the risks, Chun said. The senior chief studied her carefully. You've proven yourself, document. Nobody questions your capability anymore. But this mission is going to test everyone, and medical response under these conditions will be complicated. If you have any doubts about your ability to function in this environment, now's the time to voice them. Chun met his eyes with steady confidence. No doubts, Senior Chief. I'm ready. The team spent the afternoon in final preparations. Chun organized her expanded medical load, distributing supplies between her primary pack and a secondary kit she'd stage at the entry point. Tourniquets, hemostatic gauze, chest seals, pressure dressings, airway equipment for supplies. She calculated quantities based on worst-case scenarios, then added 20% more. Hayes found her reviewing triage protocols in the operations tent. Doc, question about casualty collection points. If we've got wounded in multiple structures, do we consolidate them for treatment, or do you move between casualties? Depends on wound severity and tactical situation, Chun replied. Immediate life threats get treated where they fall. Stable casualties can be moved to collection points. But if we're taking fire continuously, I may need to treat in place and reassess consolidation later. Hayes nodded, updating his tactical overlay. I'll identify covered positions in each structure that could serve as temporary treatment areas. Give you some options if you need to work under fire. The lieutenant commander hesitated, then spoke more personally. Chun, you've exceeded every expectation. What you've accomplished integrating with this team, the lives you've saved, the capability you bring. It's been impressive. Thank you, sir, Chun said. But tomorrow's going to be the real test, Hayes continued. Multiple casualties, sustained combat, extreme conditions. If this goes the way intelligence suggests, you'll be treating wounded continuously for 30 to 40 minutes while the firefight rages around you. That's not just medical skill, that's combat endurance. I'm prepared for it, Chun assured him. I believe you are, Hayes said. Just wanted you to know that whatever happens tomorrow, you've already proven what needed proving. Nobody doubts you anymore. After Hayes departed, Chun sat alone with her medical supplies and tactical maps. The recognition from Hayes and Miller was meaningful, acknowledgement that her integration had succeeded despite initial resistance. But tomorrow would indeed represent a different magnitude of challenge. Not a single casualty requiring immediate response, but multiple wounded over extended time under constant threat. She reviewed her medical protocols mentally, visualizing treatment sequences for various wound types. Arterial bleeding, tension pneumothorax, traumatic brain injury, abdominal wounds, extremity trauma. Each condition had specific interventions, specific time windows for effective treatment, specific supplies required. Managing multiple casualties simultaneously meant prioritizing ruthlessly, treating the savable first, making impossible decisions about resource allocation when supplies ran short. Hammer appeared at the tent entrance, carrying his gear for final inspection. He paused when he saw Chun reviewing her medical equipment. Big day tomorrow, Doc, Hammer said. Biggest yet? Chun agreed. The big SEAL entered and sat across from her. You know, when you first joined the team, I didn't think it would work. Nothing personal, just seemed like politics forcing something that didn't fit tactically. I remember, Chun said, the $20 bet about me washing out. Hammer had the grace to look embarrassed. Yeah, that. I was wrong, document. You've proven it every mission. Tomorrow's just going to be more of the same. Tomorrow's going to be worse, Chun said quietly. More casualties, more chaos, more sustained pressure. I'll be pushed harder than ever before. True, Hammer acknowledged. But you build up to this. Every mission's been preparation for the next harder one. And you keep performing. Chun appreciated his confidence, but understood the reality. Tomorrow would test limits she hadn't reached before. Sustained combat medicine wasn't just repeated execution of familiar skills. It was maintaining performance while physically exhausted, mentally strained, and emotionally processing the reality of multiple teammates wounded and bleeding. Patterson joined them, moving carefully but clearly improving. He'd heard about tomorrow's mission and wanted to offer his perspective as someone who'd been on the receiving end of Chen's field medicine. Doc, when I got hit, when Hammer was trying to reach me and couldn't, Patterson said, I knew the situation was bad. But the second I heard your voice on the radio, saying you were coming, I knew I'd make it. That confidence, that certainty that you'd reach me and fix me, that's what kept me conscious long enough for you to work. He paused, gathering his thoughts. Tomorrow, guys are going to get hit. Multiple guys, probably. And they're all going to have that same thought I had. That Doc's right there and Doc will fix them. You've earned that trust. Now you just have to execute under worse conditions than before. I will, Chun said simply. After they left, Chun completed her preparations and headed to her quarters for rest before the mission. Sleep came surprisingly easily, her body recognizing the need for recovery before extreme exertion. She dreamed of compound corridors and wounded teammates, of medical interventions performed under fire, of desperate efforts to maintain life while chaos swirled around her. Morning formation came early. The team assembled in pre-dawn darkness, each operator focused and professional. Commander Berkeley addressed them briefly, emphasizing the mission's importance and wishing them successful execution. Then Miller took over, running final checks and confirming everyone understood their responsibilities. "Doc, you good?" Miller asked. "Ready, Senior Chief," Chun confirmed. The helicopters launched at 05:30, carrying the team toward the target compound. Chun sat among the operators, her expanded medical load heavy across her back, her rifle ready, her mind running through treatment protocols one final time. Martinez sat across from her, his expression calm but focused. He caught her eye and nodded once, simple acknowledgement between teammates heading into combat. The insertion went smoothly, helicopters touching down 400 meters from the target. The team moved quickly toward the compound, using pre-dawn darkness for concealment. Chun maintained her position in the assault stack, moving with Martinez and Rodriguez ahead of her, Miller and Hammer behind. They reached the compound perimeter as the sky began lightening. The structures loomed ahead, larger than expected, with multiple fighting positions visible. Intelligence had been accurate about the fortification level. This would not be a quick raid, but a sustained battle. Miller signaled final positions. Martinez stacked on the primary door, the team forming up behind him. Chun took her place in the formation, feeling the familiar weight of Rodriguez's hand on her shoulder, maintaining contact as they trained. "Reaching on my mark," Miller said. 3, 2, 1. The door exploded inward, and the team flowed through into chaos. Gunfire erupted immediately from multiple positions, enemy fighters engaging from prepared defenses throughout the structure. Martinez and Rodriguez pushed forward, their rifles firing controlled bursts. Chun followed, her medical training subordinated to immediate tactical necessity as bullets filled the air and the mission's true complexity became instantly, violently apparent. The battle had begun, and Chun's greatest test was unfolding in real time. Everything she'd trained for, everything she'd proven in previous missions, had been preparation for this moment. Now she just had to survive it and keep her teammates alive through sustained combat that would push everyone to their absolute limits. The first casualty came within 90 seconds of breach. An operator from Bravo Element took a round through the shoulder while clearing a side room, the impact spinning him against the wall. Chun heard Hayes' call for medical support through the radio chaos, but she was pinned with Alpha Element in a narrow corridor, enemy fire preventing movement between structures. Miller made the tactical decision immediately. "Doc stays with Alpha. Bravo, you've got to stabilize him yourselves until we can consolidate positions." Chun listened to Hayes directing basic medical care through the radio, her jaw clenched with frustration at being unable to respond directly. The operator's wound wasn't immediately critical, but without proper treatment, it could deteriorate. She forced herself to focus on the immediate tactical situation, trusting that Bravo Element could manage until circumstances allowed her intervention. Martinez pushed forward through the corridor, engaging 3 enemy fighters positioned behind overturned furniture. Rodriguez moved to flank while Chun maintained security on their rear approach. The compound's interior was a maze of rooms and hallways, each corner potentially hiding hostile fighters. The tactical map from intelligence bore little resemblance to the actual structure they were fighting through. Clear, Martinez called the immediate threat neutralized, but Chun could hear sustained gunfire from deeper in the compound, indicating significant resistance remained. They advanced into a large central room where multiple corridors converged. Miller directed the team to establish temporary position while assessing the tactical situation. The gunfire had intensified throughout the compound, suggesting all elements were engaged simultaneously. This was the sustained combat Miller had predicted, not a quick raid, but a grinding battle for room-by-room control. Then Hammer's voice cut through the radio traffic, strained and urgent. "Man down, main corridor. Martinez is hit bad." Chin's stomach dropped. She looked at Martinez, who stood beside her, then realized the radio call referred to a different corridor, Hayes' Bravo Element, where another Martinez served. The confusion of names under stress, but the critical information was clear. Serious casualty, requiring immediate response. "Doc, can you reach Bravo's position?" Miller asked. Chen studied the compound layout mentally, tracing possible routes. Sir, I'd have to cross the central courtyard, approximately 20 meters of open ground. Unknown hostile positions with clear fields of fire. Miller's response was immediate. Negative, too dangerous. Bravo will have to manage. But Chun could hear the stress in Hayes's radio voice as he tried to direct medical treatment he wasn't trained to provide. The wounded Martinez had taken a round through the femoral area, massive bleeding that required expert intervention within minutes. Hayes was applying pressure, but the injury exceeded basic first aid capabilities. Senior Chief, if at the femoral artery hit, he's got maybe 3 minutes before blood loss becomes irreversible, Chin said quietly. Bravo Element doesn't have the training or equipment to handle it. Miller met her eyes, the weight of command, decision visible in his expression. Doc, I can't order you to cross that courtyard. It's suicide. Chin was already checking her medical pack, ensuring critical supplies were accessible. You're not ordering me, Senior Chief. I'm volunteering. Before Miller could respond, Chun moved to the doorway facing the courtyard. She could see the open space, approximately 20 meters of packed earth with minimal cover. On the far side, Bravo Element's position where the wounded Martinez was bleeding. Every second of delay reduced his survival probability. Martinez, the one beside her, gripped her shoulder. Doc, that's a bad run. Multiple windows with unknown hostile positions. I know, Chin replied. But he's dying, and I'm the only one who can stop it. She didn't wait for further discussion. Chin burst from the doorway at full sprint, her medical pack bouncing against her back, her rifle held ready. The distance felt infinite, each step an eternity of exposure. Gunfire erupted from second-floor window, bullets impacting around her. She kept running, momentum carrying her forward, refusing to slow or take cover until she reached the far structure. She hit the doorway hard, rolling inside as more rounds chewed into the frame behind her. Hayes looked stunned to see her. Doc, what the hell? He started. Where's Martinez? Chun interrupted. Hayes directed her to a side room where the wounded operator lay with Hammer applying pressure to his thigh. Blood covered the floor, too much blood for the time elapsed. The femoral artery was definitely compromised, and basic pressure wasn't controlling the hemorrhage adequately. Chun dropped beside Martinez, her hands immediately assessing the wound. High thigh penetration, arterial bleeding, patient unconscious from blood loss. She had minutes, maybe less. Hammer, maintain pressure exactly where you are, Chun ordered, pulling hemostatic gauze from her pack. She worked with fierce concentration, packing the wound channel, while Hammer's massive hands provided the pressure platform she needed. The bleeding slowed, but didn't stop completely, indicating partial vessel damage rather than complete transection. I need to get deeper to the vessel, Chun said, more to herself than anyone listening. She repositioned her approach, using anatomical knowledge to trace the femoral artery's path, packing gauze along the vessel's course with precise pressure that finally controlled the bleeding. Martinez's pulse was thready but present. Chun established fore access and pushed fluids, watching his color for signs of improved perfusion. The treatment was aggressive and comprehensive, exactly what the situation required, performed under combat conditions that would have paralyzed less experienced medics. Hayes watched from the doorway, maintaining security while witnessing Chin's medical intervention. His expression showed recognition that this level of capability exceeded anything he'd fully appreciated before. This wasn't just competent first aid. This was surgical precision under impossible circumstances. He's stable, Chin reported after 3 minutes of intense work. But he needs immediate evacuation and surgical repair. This is a temporary fix. Hayes nodded and called for emergency extraction. The gunfire throughout the compound continued unabated, but something in the tactical situation had shifted. The team was gaining ground, clearing rooms systematically despite heavy resistance. Chin secured Martinez's dressings and prepared him for movement. Hammer helped position the wounded operator for carry, their movements coordinated through practice teamwork. As they worked, Another call came through the radio. More casualties, Alpha element this time. Rodriguez and another operator hit during a push through the western corridor. Doc, Miller's voice carried controlled urgency. How fast can you get back to Alpha position? Chin looked at the courtyard she just crossed, knowing that repeating that sprint was inviting the enemy fighters to adjust their aim. But Rodriguez and the other operator needed her, and staying with Bravo element meant Alpha casualties would receive only basic care. 2 minutes, Senior Chief, Chin replied. I'm moving now. Hey, step beside her. Doc, I'll provide covering fire. You sprint on my signal. Chun positioned at the doorway, every muscle tense for the run. Hayes leaned out and engaged the second-floor windows with sustained bursts. Chun launched into the courtyard at his signal, running even faster than before, zigzagging to complicate targeting. Bullets tracked her movement, but she was faster, motivated by desperate need to reach her wounded teammates. She crashed through Alpha Element's doorway, breathing hard but immediately focused. Rodriguez sat propped against a wall, blood seeping through his uniform from a torso wound. The other operator lay flat with a leg injury, less critical but requiring attention. Chan went to Rodriguez first, the torso wound taking priority. She cut away his uniform, exposing an entry wound in his lower left chest. Possible lung involvement, definite rib damage. She checked for exit wound and found none, meaning the bullet remained inside. His breathing was labored, suggesting tension pneumothorax developing. Rodriguez, I need to decompress your chest, Chun said, preparing a needle. This is going to hurt, but you need it. Do what you gotta do, Doc. Rodriguez managed through gritted teeth. Chin performed the needle decompression with practiced precision, relieving the pressure building in Rodriguez's chest cavity. His breathing immediately improved, color returning to his face. She sealed the entry wound with a chest seal, established for access, and prepared him for evacuation. The other operator's leg wound was simpler, a through hand throw that missed major vessels. Chin packed and dressed it efficiently, her hands moving automatically through procedures she'd performed countless times in training and increasingly in actual combat. Miller appeared, his rifle still smoking from recent engagement. How are they? Rodriguez needs surgical evaluation for the chest wound, possible lung damage, Chin reported. The other operator is stable, straightforward extremity wound. Both are good for evacuation. The senior chief nodded. Extract birds are inbound, 3 minutes out. We've broken the enemy's main resistance. Compound is mostly secure. Final clearance ongoing, but the worst is over. Chin sat back against the wall, allowing herself a moment of exhaustion now that immediate crisis had passed. Her uniform was soaked with blood from multiple casualties, her medical supplies significantly depleted, her body running on adrenaline and professional necessity. Martinez, the uninjured one, dropped beside her. Doc, you just crossed that courtyard twice under fire to treat casualties in different elements. That's beyond anything we've asked of any medic. Just doing my job, Chin replied automatically. No, Martinez said firmly. That's doing everyone's job. You're not just our medic, you're an operator who happens to have medical training. Big difference. The extraction helicopters arrived, and Chun helped load the 3 casualties aboard. Martinez from Bravo Element had stabilized, his femoral repair holding through the movement. Rodriguez was conscious and stable despite the chest wound. The third operator was mobile with assistance, his leg injury painful but not life-threatening. As the helicopters lifted away, Chun stood in the compound courtyard, the same open space she'd sprinted across twice during the heat of battle. The morning sun illuminated bullet impacts in the dirt, physical evidence of how close she'd come to becoming a casualty herself. But the mission was nearly complete, the wounded were evacuated alive, and the team had secured their objective despite heavy resistance. Miller approached with Hayes and Commander Berkeley, who had monitored the entire operation from Tactical Operations Center. The commander's expression was grave, but carried something else, recognition perhaps, or reassessment of assumptions. HM2 Chun, Berkeley said formally. I monitored your actions throughout this engagement. 2 crossings of open ground under fire, treatment of 3 separate casualties with different critical injuries, sustained performance under the most challenging combat conditions. That was extraordinary work. Thank you, sir, Chen replied. More than that, Berkeley continued, it was definitive proof of capability. Nobody can question anymore whether women belong in special operations medical roles. You've answered that question conclusively. The words carried weight, official recognition from senior command. But Chen found herself less focused on the political implications and more on the simple fact that 3 teammates were alive and heading towards surgical care. The proving moment everyone had anticipated, the dramatic demonstration of capability that would silence doubters, had arrived through necessity rather than design. She'd simply done what needed doing repeatedly under impossible conditions because her teammates needed her and she had the skills to respond. The final clearance of the compound took another 20 minutes, but the heavy fighting had ended. Enemy fighters either eliminated or scattered, the objective secured, the mission technically successful despite the cost in wounded. Chun remained with Alpha Element as they systematically checked each room, her medical pack ready for additional casualties that thankfully never materialized. When the all-clear signal finally came, the team consolidated in the central courtyard. Chun counted faces, matching each operator to her mental roster. Martinez was mobile despite his earlier engagement. Hammer showed no injuries. Miller moved with his characteristic efficiency, checking on each team member personally. The operators from Bravo Element reported their status. Everyone accounted for except the 3 casualties already evacuated. Hayes approached Chun as she repacked her remaining medical supplies. The lieutenant commander's uniform showed evidence of close combat, tears in the fabric and powder residue from sustained shooting. His expression when he looked at Chun carried something new, beyond the professional respect he'd shown in recent weeks. "Doc, I owe you an apology," Hayes said quietly. "When you first joined this team, I didn't think you could handle the physical demands. Thought your size would be a liability in combat situations. I was wrong, and more than that, I was letting bias cloud tactical judgment." Chun looked up from her medical pack. "Sir, you were being cautious with an unknown asset. That's reasonable command thinking." Hayes shook his head. "It wasn't just caution. It was assumption that gender would limit capability. Watching you cross that courtyard twice while taking fire, treating multiple critical casualties without hesitation, maintaining absolute composure while the compound fell apart around you." He paused. "That's not just competence, document. That's exceptional performance under the worst possible conditions." Miller joined them, his tactical vest still loaded with ammunition and equipment. The senior chief's face showed the strain of commanding through sustained combat, but his eyes were clear and focused when he addressed Chun. "Doc, I've been running operations with SEAL teams for 2 decades, Miller said. "I worked with dozens of medics, some good, some exceptional. What you did today puts you in the top tier of combat medics I've ever seen, regardless of gender or any other factor." Chun felt the weight of that assessment from a veteran with Miller's experience. "Thank you, Senior Chief. That means a lot." Martinez approached, the uninjured one who'd fought beside Chun through the entire engagement. Behind him came Hammer, and then the rest of Alpha Element formed a loose circle around them. The gathering felt spontaneous but purposeful, operators recognizing a moment that required acknowledgement. "Doc, when you went through BUD/S and medical training, they told you it would be harder as a woman, right?" Martinez said. "Every day," Chun confirmed. "And when you joined this team, we made it harder still," Martinez continued. "Questioning your capability, keeping you separated from operations, treating you like someone who needed protection rather than someone who could protect us." Chun didn't respond, letting Martinez work through whatever point he was building toward. "Today, you prove beyond any possible doubt that you're not just capable of doing this job, you're better at it than most people who've ever attempted it," Martinez said. The entire team's nodding agreement punctuated his words. "You saved 3 lives under conditions that would have broken most medics. You didn't just meet the standard, you exceeded it dramatically." Hammer stepped forward, his massive frame and scarred face making his words carry additional weight. I bet against you, document said you wouldn't make it, wouldn't be able to handle the physical demands. I was completely wrong. You're not just part of this team, you're critical to this team. Today proved that conclusively. The other operators added their acknowledgments, brief statements, and gestures that conveyed respect earned through shared combat. Chun listened, recognizing this moment as the validation she'd worked toward since joining the team. Not grudging acceptance or political accommodation, but genuine recognition from operators who measured worth through performance under fire. Commander Berkeley appeared with Hayes at his side, having entered the compound once final clearance was confirmed. The commander carried a tablet displaying mission data and casualty reports. He addressed the assembled team formally. Gentlemen and Doc, this operation encountered significantly heavier resistance than intelligence predicted. We took 3 casualties, all serious, but all survived due to immediate and expert medical intervention. The after-action analysis indicates that without HM2 Chin's actions, we would likely be looking at multiple fatalities today. Berkeley paused, letting that assessment settle over the group. He continued with increased emphasis. The question of female integration in special operations combat roles has been contentious since its inception. Opponents argued women couldn't meet physical standards, couldn't maintain composure under extreme stress, couldn't function effectively as integrated team members. Today, HM2 Chun disproved every one of those arguments decisively. The commander looked directly at Chun. Doc, your performance today will be documented in official after-action reports and used as case study material for future integration efforts. 2 crossings of open ground under direct enemy fire. Treatment of arterial hemorrhage, tension pneumothorax, and multiple traumatic injuries. Sustained performance over 40 minutes of continuous combat. Those facts speak for themselves. Chun stood at attention, recognizing the formality of the moment. Thank you, sir. I had excellent teammates providing support throughout. Berkeley allowed a slight smile. Humility is admirable, Doc, but this is your moment. Accept the recognition you've earned. The commander departed to coordinate extraction and debriefing logistics. The team began breaking down equipment and preparing for helicopter arrival. Chun returned to her medical supplies, conducting inventory of depleted items and noting resupply requirements. The familiar routine helped process the morning's intensity, channeling adrenaline into productive activity. Patterson approached, moving carefully but clearly continuing his recovery. He'd monitored the operation from base, listening to radio traffic while unable to participate. His expression showed mixed emotions, relief that the mission succeeded, but frustration at being unable to help. Doc, I listened to everything over comms, Patterson said. When you made that first courtyard crossing, my heart stopped. Thought for sure we were going to lose you. Had to reach Martinez, Chun replied simply. I know, Patterson said, and that's what makes you who you are. You don't calculate risk versus benefit and make safe choices. You identify what needs doing and you do it, regardless of personal danger. That's what all of us do, Chun countered. Maybe, Patterson acknowledged, but you do it while carrying 80 pounds of medical gear and responsibility for keeping everyone else alive. That's a different level of burden. Rodriguez, the wounded one from the neck injury weeks earlier, approached on Patterson's heels. He'd been monitoring from medical facilities where he was still recovering. His voice came through a radio Patterson carried, unable to be present physically, but wanting to contribute his perspective. Doc, this is Rodriguez, the voice crackled. Just heard the casualty reports. The other Rodriguez, the one you saved today, he's my cousin. Same last name, both in the teams, been serving together for years. You saved my life weeks ago. Now you saved his life today. My whole family owes you everything. Chun felt the emotional weight of that connection, the intersecting lines of relationship and consequence that combat medicine revealed. Just doing my job, Rodriguez, she said into the radio. No, it's more than a job, Rodriguez insisted. It's calling, and you answer it better than anyone I've witnessed. The extraction helicopters appeared on the horizon, multiple aircraft arriving to transport the team back to base. Chun helped load equipment, her medical pack substantially lighter after the morning's expenditure of supplies. The operators moved with post-combat exhaustion, the adrenaline fading to reveal accumulated fatigue. As they loaded aboard the helicopters, Martinez positioned himself beside Chun, the operator who'd fought alongside her through the entire engagement, who'd watched her cross that courtyard twice, who'd witnessed the medical interventions that saved his teammate. "Doc, when this deployment ends and we cycle home, there's going to be awards and recognition," Martinez said. "Bronze Star probably, maybe higher. The Navy's going to want to showcase your performance as evidence that integration works." Chun nodded, understanding the political dimension even as she focused on the tactical reality. "But here's what matters more than any medal," Martinez continued. "Every operator on this team knows without doubt that if they go down, you'll reach them and you'll save them. That certainty, that trust, that's the real recognition. That's what makes you part of this team at the deepest level." The helicopter lifted off, carrying them away from the compound where the proving moment had finally arrived. Chun looked down at the courtyard, visible through the aircraft's open door, the packed earth marked with bullet impacts and bloodstains. That ground represented the physical space where doubt had been eliminated, where capability had been demonstrated beyond any possible contradiction. Miller's voice came through the headset, addressing the entire team. "Outstanding work today, everyone. Serious resistance, heavy casualties, mission accomplished. Every operator performed at peak level under extreme conditions." He paused, then added, "Special recognition to Doc for keeping our wounded alive through expert medical intervention under sustained combat. That's what makes the difference between mission success and tragedy." The other operators nodded agreement, the gesture visible even through the helicopter's vibration and noise. Chun accepted the recognition quietly, her mind already processing the medical interventions she'd performed, identifying areas for improvement, considering how she'd handle similar situations in future operations. Because there would be future operations, more missions, more casualties requiring her skills. The proving moment had passed, the dramatic demonstration complete, but the actual work continued. Every operation brought new challenges, new wounded teammates, new desperate situations requiring immediate response. The difference now was that nobody questioned whether she could handle those situations. The team trusted her completely, leadership recognized her capability officially, and the broader military establishment had documentation proving female integration in combat roles could succeed at the highest levels. But for Chun, the most meaningful validation came from the simple fact that 3 wounded operators were alive, heading towards surgical care and eventual recovery. Martinez would heal from his femoral injury. Rodriguez would recover from the chest wound. The third operator would regain full use of his leg. Those outcomes, those lives preserved, represented the true measure of her performance. Awards and recognition would come, political implications would be debated, policy decisions would be influenced by her example. But the concrete reality was simpler and more profound. She'd done her job when it mattered most, under the worst possible conditions, and her teammates had survived because of it. The helicopter carried them toward base, toward debriefing and medical checks, and the administrative aftermath of combat operations. Chun sat among the operators, her blood-stained uniform and depleted medical pack, physical evidence of the morning's intensity. She was exhausted, emotionally drained, physically spent. But she was also certain, more than ever before, that she belonged exactly where she was, doing exactly what she trained to do. The test case had been validated. The experiment had succeeded. And most importantly, her teammates were alive. The debriefing lasted 3 hours, each element of the operation analyzed and documented with meticulous detail. Chun provided comprehensive medical reports on all 3 casualties, describing wound patterns, treatment interventions, and survival probabilities at various decision points. Commander Berkeley recorded everything, occasionally asking clarifying questions that revealed his intention to use this operation as definitive case study material. When a formal debriefing concluded, Berkeley requested Chun remain for additional discussion. Miller and Hayes stayed as well, the four of them sitting in the operations tent while the rest of the team dispersed for rest and recovery. "Doc, I'm submitting your actions for Bronze Star with Valor," Berkeley said directly. "The citation will detail your medical interventions under fire, the courtyard crossings, and the direct impact on mission success. This will be high-profile recognition that extends beyond our immediate chain of command." Chun nodded understanding. "Sir, if the recognition helps advance integration efforts, I'm supportive. But my primary concern is always going to be the medical mission." "I understand that," Berkeley replied. "And that focus, that priority on the mission over personal recognition, is part of what makes your example so powerful." He pulled up files on his tablet. "I've received inquiries from Naval Special Warfare Command, from Pentagon Integration Oversight, from congressional committees monitoring female combat role implementation. Everyone wants to know about today's operation." Miller spoke carefully. "Sir, with respect, Doc doesn't need to become a poster child for political agendas. She's an operator who happens to be female, not a political statement." "Agreed," Berkeley said. "But the reality is her performance has implications beyond this team. Whether we like it or not, she represents validation of policies that remain controversial." His expression showed recognition of the complexity. "Doc, how do you want to handle the attention that's coming?" Chun considered the question thoughtfully. "Sir, I prefer to focus on professional development and continued operations. If media or political attention is unavoidable, I'll participate as required. But I don't want special treatment or elevated profile that separates me from the team." Hayes added his perspective. "Commander, the team's acceptance of Doc came through shared operations and proven capability, not through publicity or political positioning. Maintaining that dynamic requires keeping her integrated as a regular team member, not elevating her to special status." Berkeley absorbed their input, then made his decision. "Here's how we'll handle it. Official recognition proceeds through normal channels, Bronze Star recommendation with full citation. Doc will be available for required briefings and command-level discussions about integration lessons learned. But no media appearances, no political events, no separation from operational duties. She remains with the team, continues standard mission rotation, and her example speaks through documented performance rather than publicity campaigns." Chun felt relief at that approach. It allowed recognition of her accomplishments without transforming her into a symbol rather than an operator. "Thank you, sir. That's exactly what I'd hoped for." The commander departed, leaving Miller, Hayes, and Chun in the operations tent. The two senior leaders looked at each other, some unspoken communication passing between them. Then Miller spoke. "Doc, when you first joined this team, we made mistakes in how we positioned you, kept you separated, limited your integration, treated you as someone who needed protection rather than a full team member. That was wrong. It was based on assumptions that today's operation proved completely invalid." Hayes continued the thought. "We're going to be writing lessons, learn documentation about integration best practices. The core lesson is simple. Evaluate individuals based on capability and performance, not preconceptions about gender limitations. Seems obvious in hindsight, but it took your repeated demonstrations to force us past our biases." Chun appreciated their honesty, but felt compelled to acknowledge the broader context. "Senior Chief, Lieutenant Commander, you were operating under immense pressure. Political scrutiny, career risk, responsibility for a test case that could impact policy across the entire military. Your caution was understandable." "Maybe," Miller said, "but caution became obstacle. We held you back when we should have trusted your training and capability from the start. That's the lesson we need to ensure doesn't get repeated with future integration efforts." The three of them sat quietly for a moment, processing the journey from Chen's first awkward integration attempts to today's dramatic validation. The path had been difficult, marked by skepticism and resistance, but the destination felt solid and earned. Hayes checked his watch. "Doc, you've been operational for 18 hours straight, most of it under extreme stress. Get some rest." We've got 48 hours downtime before next mission planning begins. Chun stood, feeling the accumulated exhaustion in her muscles and bones. Yes, sir. She headed toward her quarters, but Martinez intercepted her outside the operations tent. Doc, hold up, Martinez said. The team's gathering at the rec area. Nothing formal, just want to decompress together. You should come. Chun hesitated, aware of her exhaustion, but recognizing the invitation's significance. The team gathering represented inclusion at the most fundamental level, the informal bonds that connected operators beyond official duties. The rec area was crowded when she arrived. Operators from both Alpha and Bravo elements gathered in loose groups. Hammer saw her enter and raised a water bottle in salute. Others nodded acknowledgement, making space for her to join the gathering naturally. Patterson, still recovering but mobile, approached with obvious purpose. Doc, I've been wanting to say something since I got back from medical. When you disobeyed orders to reach me, when you ran across that courtyard while Hammer couldn't get to me, you made a decision that saved my life but risked your career. That's loyalty beyond what duty requires. You would have done the same, Chun replied. Maybe, Patterson said, but I didn't have to make that choice. You did, and you made it without hesitation. That's character, document. That's what defines real teammates. Rodriguez joined them, the one who'd been wounded during today's operation, now connected via video call from the field hospital. His face appeared on a tablet, another operator held up, his expression grateful despite obvious pain and medication effects. Doc, they tell me you packed my femoral artery while taking fire, Rodriguez said, his words slightly slurred. Surgeons said your field work was perfect, probably added 30 minutes to my survival window. That's the difference between living and dying. Just glad you're going to recover, Chun replied. The other Rodriguez, the neck wound survivor, appeared in the video feed beside his cousin. Both of us owe our lives to you, document. That's a debt we can't repay, but we'll spend our careers trying. The gathering continued for another hour, operators sharing stories and processing the day's intensity. Chun found herself fully integrated into the conversations, no longer the outsider or the political experiment, but simply another team member who'd shared combat and survived together. Miller appeared near the end of the gathering, his presence shifting the atmosphere slightly toward formality. The senior chief addressed the assembled operators directly. Today was hard combat against heavy resistance. We took casualties, but everyone survived because of excellent tactical execution and exceptional medical support. He looked at Chun. Doc proved conclusively what some of us were slow to recognize, that capability isn't determined by gender, but by skill, courage, and dedication to teammates. The operators showed their agreement through nods and quiet affirmations. Miller continued. Moving forward, this team operates with complete integration. No special positioning, no protective restrictions, no different standards. Doc's a full operator who happens to have critical medical skills. That's how we'll function on every future mission. The gathering broke up shortly after, operators heading to quarters for desperately needed rest. Chun walked back through the base, her body heavy with exhaustion, but her mind clear with satisfaction. The proving moment had arrived and passed. The validation complete, the acceptance genuine. In her quarters, she stripped off the blood-stained uniform and stood under the shower for long minutes, washing away the physical evidence of combat while processing the emotional weight. 3 teammates wounded but alive. A courtyard crossed twice under fire. Medical interventions performed under impossible conditions. Recognition from leadership and teammates alike. The test case had succeeded. Female integration in special operations combat roles had been validated at the highest operational level. Future women attempting similar paths would have her example as evidence that success was possible. But for Chun, the significance remained more immediate and personal. She'd done exactly what she'd trained to do, reached teammates who needed her, kept them alive through desperate circumstances. The political implications and policy impacts mattered, but the concrete reality mattered more. She thought about Martinez bleeding from femoral damage, Rodriguez struggling to breathe through chest trauma, the third operator wounded but stable. All of them heading toward full recovery because she'd been positioned correctly, trained thoroughly, and willing to risk everything to reach them. That outcome justified every challenge she'd faced integrating with the team, every moment of doubt and resistance, every proving moment large and small that had built toward today's climax. She'd earned her place not through political accommodation or lowered standards, but through performance that exceeded expectations and saved lives under the worst possible circumstances. Sleep came easily, exhaustion overwhelming the residual adrenaline. Chen's last conscious thought was simple and certain. Tomorrow would bring new missions, new challenges, new opportunities to prove that her success today wasn't exceptional performance, but sustainable standard. The test case would continue. The scrutiny would persist, but the fundamental question had been answered. She belonged here, doing this work with this team. And finally, everyone believed it. The next morning brought official notification of her Bronze Star recommendation, formal documentation of the previous day's actions, and updated mission planning for operations beginning in 48 hours. Chun attended morning formation with the team, her position among the operators natural and unquestioned. Commander Berkeley appeared during the formation to make an announcement. HM-2 Chen's actions during yesterday's operation have been forwarded to Naval Special Warfare Command with recommendation for Bronze Star with valid advice. Additionally, her performance has been documented as case study material for integration training programs across all Special Operations Forces. The team showed their support through the military's understated approval, slight nods, and professional acknowledgement that meant more than dramatic gestures. Chun stood at attention, accepting the recognition while maintaining focus on future operations rather than past achievements. After formation, Martinez approached with tactical maps for the next mission. "Doc, you're with Alpha Element again, position 3 in the stack. We got a target package developing, should have full brief this afternoon." Chin studied the preliminary maps, already thinking through medical contingencies and casualty evacuation routes. Standard preparation, familiar routine, exactly what she wanted. Not special treatment or modified duties, but full integration as a regular team member whose medical skills represented critical capability. The proving moment had passed, but the work continued. And that continuation, that return to operational focus and regular mission rhythm, represented the truest validation. She wasn't a symbol or experiment anymore. She was simply Doc, the team medic who'd proven beyond doubt that she'd reach any teammate who fell and do everything possible to bring them home alive. That certainty, shared by every operator on the team, was worth more than any medal or recognition. It was the foundation of trust that made special operations possible, the unspoken guarantee that someone would always come when you needed them most. Chun had earned that trust through repeated performance under fire. Now, she just had to maintain it, mission after mission, for as long as she remained with the team. The test case would continue, but the question had been answered. She belonged completely and without qualification, and everyone finally knew it. 3 weeks after the courtyard operation, Chin stood in formation as Commander Berkeley pinned the Bronze Star with Valor device to her uniform. The ceremony was small and professional, limited to the team and immediate command staff. No media presence, no political representatives, just operators acknowledging exceptional performance by one of their own. The citation detailed her actions with clinical precision. 2 movements across open ground under direct enemy fire. Treatment of 3 critical casualties with arterial hemorrhage, tension pneumothorax, and complex traumatic injuries. Sustained performance under combat conditions that directly prevented multiple fatalities and ensured mission success. Miller read the citation aloud, his voice carrying the weight of someone who'd witnessed the events firsthand. HM-2 Sarah Chun distinguished herself through heroic achievement while serving as combat medic with Naval Special Warfare Task Unit during combat operations. Her exceptional courage, expert medical interventions, and complete disregard for personal safety and service to wounded teammates exemplify the highest traditions of military service. The formation stood at attention as Berkeley completed the pinning. Chun maintained military bearing, focused and professional, accepting the recognition as validation of capability rather than personal glorification. When the ceremony concluded, the team offered their congratulations with characteristic understatement, brief handshakes, and nods that conveyed more than elaborate praise. Patterson approached first, moving without difficulty now, his abdominal wound fully healed. "Doc, this medal represents 3 guys who are alive to see it pinned on your chest. That's what matters most." Rodriguez joined him, the neck wound survivor, now cleared for full duty. Plus another Rodriguez, my cousin, who's recovering at Bethesda but sends his regards. He'll be back with his team in 3 months, the doctors say. Because of you, the gathering dispersed to mission planning, the operational tempo continuing without pause for ceremony or recognition. Chun changed from her dress uniform into standard combat gear, preparing for an afternoon briefing on new intelligence requiring team deployment within 48 hours. Hayes found her reviewing medical supply inventories in the operations tent. "Doc, got a minute?" The lieutenant commander carried a folder marked with classification headers. Chun looked up from her inventory sheets. "Yes, sir." Hayes sat across from her, opening the folder to reveal policy documents and integration assessment reports. Naval Special Warfare Command is implementing new guidelines for female operator integration based on lessons learned from your performance. They're using your example to establish training protocols, positioning doctrine, and capability standards. Chun scanned the documents, recognizing excerpts from mission reports and Berkeley's detailed analysis. "This looks comprehensive, sir." "It is," Hayes confirmed, "and it's going to open doors for other women attempting to earn positions in special operations units. Your success proves the concept works when implementation is done correctly." He paused, then continued with obvious sincerity. "I wanted to personally apologize again for my initial skepticism. I let assumptions override tactical judgment, and that was wrong. The way you've performed, the capability you've demonstrated, it should have been obvious from the start that gender wasn't the determining factor." Chun appreciated his honesty, but felt compelled to provide broader context. "Sir, you were managing unprecedented integration under intense scrutiny. Some caution was reasonable. What matters is that you adjusted based on demonstrated performance. Still," Hayes said, "we cost you months of limited integration that shouldn't have been necessary. That's time and operational experience you can't get back. But it built foundation for permanent change," Chun countered. "If integration had been immediate and easy, skeptics would claim it was political accommodation. The fact that I had to prove capability repeatedly under increasingly difficult conditions makes the validation conclusive." Hayes nodded slowly, accepting her perspective. "You're probably right. Doesn't make me feel better about the obstacles we put in your way, but I understand your point." After Hayes departed, Miller appeared with Martinez and Hammer. The 3 senior operators carried tactical maps and mission briefing materials, but their presence felt more purposeful than simple mission planning. "Doc, we wanted to talk about future positioning," Miller began. "You've proven you can operate effectively in assault element, but we're wondering if there's value in developing more flexible deployment options based on mission requirements." Chun listened carefully, recognizing this as inclusion in tactical planning discussions rather than being dictated positioning. "Some operations might benefit from you moving with point element. Others might work better with you positioned mid-stack or even trailing for immediate casualty response," Martinez explained. "We're thinking adaptive positioning based on compound layout and expected threat level." "Makes sense tactically," Chun agreed. "Medical response time should be primary consideration, which means positioning varies by mission profile." Hammer added his perspective. "We're also thinking about cross-training. You've proven combat capability beyond just medical skills. Might be worth developing you as backup breacher or communication specialist. Give the team additional flexibility." Chun considered the implications. Cross-training would represent complete integration, positioning her as a multi-capable operator rather than solely a medical specialist. "I'm interested in any training that makes me more effective as a team member." The discussion continued for another hour, detailed tactical analysis that included Chun as full participant rather than subject to planning. When it concluded, she felt the significance of that inclusion. Not just acceptance as the team medic, but recognition as an operator whose input on tactical decisions carried weight equal to any other experienced team member. The next mission launched 48 hours later, a compound raid similar to previous operations, but with Chun positioned differently based on the tactical discussion. She moved with the trailing element, positioned to respond rapidly to casualties in either assault team, while maintaining protected approach for medical intervention. The mission went smoothly. No casualties required her skills, but the tactical positioning proved effective. Operations continued through the following months, a rhythm of mission planning, execution, and preparation for the next deployment. Chin treated injuries ranging from minor to critical, each intervention building her experience and reinforcing the team's trust. Patterson and both Rodriguez casualties returned to full duty, their recoveries complete and their capabilities undiminished. 6 months after the courtyard operation, Chin received orders for rotation back to the United States. Her deployment was complete, her performance documented, her impact on integration policy established. The team gathered for informal farewell, operators who'd initially doubted her now expressing genuine respect and regret at her departure. "Doc, you changed this team," Martinez said simply, "not just proving that women can do this work, but showing all of us how wrong our assumptions were. That's a legacy beyond any single operation." Hammer offered his characteristic blunt honesty. "I bet against you, and I was dead wrong. You're the best combat medic I've worked with, period. Gender's got nothing to do with it. You're just exceptional at what you do." Miller spoke last, his words carrying the weight of leadership and accumulated experience. "Doc, you came to this team as a test case and a political statement. You're leaving as an operator who saved lives, proved capability, and established new standards for integration. That transformation happened through your performance, not through policy or accommodation. You earned everything you achieved." Chun felt the emotional weight of those acknowledgments, but maintained her characteristic professional composure. "I had exceptional teammates who gave me opportunities to prove capability. This success belongs to all of us." The farewell concluded with handshakes and the understated affection that connected operators who'd shared combat. Chun departed the forward base with her gear and her Bronze Star, heading toward reassignment that would likely involve training responsibilities and integration policy development. But her thoughts remained focused on the team she was leaving, the operators who'd initially doubted and eventually accepted her, the wounded teammates whose lives she'd saved, the missions that had tested her limits and proven her capability. That experience, those relationships, that validation through performance under fire represented the core of what mattered. The test case had succeeded conclusively. Female integration in special operations combat roles had been validated at the highest operational level. Future women attempting similar paths would reference her example as proof that success was achievable through capability and determination. Chun understood the significance of that legacy. The doors opened and barriers broken through her documented performance. But her personal satisfaction came from simpler certainty. She'd done exactly what she trained to do, kept teammates alive under impossible conditions, and earned her place through demonstrated excellence rather than accommodation. The integration battle wasn't finished. Challenges remained ahead for women attempting to follow her path. But the fundamental question had been answered through her example. Women could perform at the highest levels of special operations combat roles when given opportunity and evaluated fairly based on capability rather than assumption. 3 teammates saved from critical injuries. A courtyard crossed twice under fire. Treatment performed while bullets impacted around her. Recognition earned through performance that exceeded expectations and established new standards. That was her legacy, concrete and undeniable. Not a political statement or symbolic achievement, but operational excellence that saved lives and proved capability beyond any possible doubt. The test case was complete, the validation absolute, and the future wide open for those who would follow. Chun boarded the transport aircraft heading home. Her deployment concluded, but her impact permanent. Somewhere in military hospitals and rehabilitation centers, Patterson and 2 Rodriguez casualties continued their recoveries, alive because she'd reached them when they needed her most. That certainty, that concrete reality of lives saved through her skills and courage, remained the truest measure of her success. Awards and recognition would fade, policy implications would evolve, but those 3 operators would carry the evidence of her capability in their healed wounds and continued service. She'd proven what needed proving, not through words or politics, but through action under fire. The doubters had become believers, the skeptics had become supporters, and the team had become family. That transformation, earned through repeated performance under increasingly difficult conditions, represented victory more meaningful than any medal or official recognition. The aircraft lifted off, carrying her away from the forward base and the team that had become home. Chun looked back at the compound where so much had been proven, where doubt had been eliminated through demonstrated excellence, where she'd finally earned unqualified acceptance as an operator who happened to be female rather than a female attempting to be an operator. The journey had been difficult, marked by skepticism and resistance and the constant weight of representation. But the destination was solid, the validation complete, and the path forward clear for those who would follow. She'd done what she'd set out to do, proven what needed proving, and opened doors that would remain open for future generations. That was enough. That was everything. And as the aircraft carried her toward whatever came next, Chun felt the quiet satisfaction of purpose fulfilled and capability proven beyond any shadow of doubt. The test case was complete, and the answer was definitive. Women belonged in special operations combat roles, performing at the highest levels, saving lives, and earning respect through excellence rather than accommodation. She'd proven it conclusively, one mission at a time, one saved life at a time, one converted skeptic at a time. And that proof, documented and undeniable, would echo forward through every woman who followed her path into the teams. Have you ever witnessed someone prove their doubters wrong through sheer determination and skill? What's your story of overcoming skepticism to achieve something people said was impossible?